arc measure. So in this one, we need to go over another thing, which is the arc addition postulate. So that is the measure of the arc formed by the sum of two adjacent arcs. So essentially, two smaller arcs that are right next to each other make up a larger arc, right? That would be what we're looking at. So in this one, example 1, we're going to find the arc measure of the arc of BCD in the circle below using arc addition postulate. So once again, B is the diameter. So we're looking at this. This is the larger arc that's formed when you break it down into two separate ones, right, that are adjacent to each other. So, right, they form, these are right next to each other. So we have, right, we have BC, right, like this arc, BC, plus the arc of CD, which makes up this larger one of this arc of BCD. So these two smaller arcs make up this larger arc here. So let's now plug in our numbers. So what do we know? Well, we know, if we were to erase this a little bit, we know our arc of BC has an arc measure of 52 degrees. And then we know, right, anytime we see this little square here, it indicates 90-degree angle. So that arc measure of CD is 90 degrees. So then we can go ahead and look at the arc measure of BCD. So what does that equal? Well, we've already went over this, but this is 142 degrees, and that's the arc measure of BCD, right? Now it's important to understand it in terms of, right, our arc addition postulate. So how we can add two smaller arcs together to form this larger arc. So let's look at another example. Example 2, find the arc measure of AB in degrees of the circle X if the arc measure of AB is equal to 5x plus 5 and the arc measure of BC is 14x plus 1. So what we're looking at is we are looking for the arc measure, right, in terms of degrees, right here. So we're going to cut. That's what we're looking for. But what we're given is this just 5x plus 5, so we're given an expression, and we have 14x plus 1. And then we're also given 120 degrees for the larger arc of, right, of measure of A, B, C, right, which is equal to 120 degrees. So we're given the larger arc, but we need to break that down in order to find what just AB is. So let's go over all that we know. So we know what the arc measure of AB is 5x plus 5, and we know the arc measure of BC is 14x plus 1. So if we go ahead and, right, if we add up the smaller arcs, it's going to be equal to the larger arc. So let's go ahead and just substitute in all these values when we see them in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we know, so let's go ahead and go 5x plus 5, put that in parentheses, plus this arc measure BC, which is equal to 14x plus 1, which is equal to 120 degrees. Now let's simplify on the left-hand side because we know 5x and 14x can be combined, and we know this 5 and 1 can be combined. So we're going to add like terms. So 5x plus 14x just means we're adding up the numbers. So 5 plus 14 is 19x. Right, we added these together, and then we're going to add these together. Plus, then we have 5 plus 1, so that's just 6, which is equal to 120. Now, in order to get x by itself, the first thing we're going to do now is going to go ahead and subtract 6 on both sides. So that way it's 0 on the left-hand side, and whatever we do to the left-hand side, we have to do to the right. So 120 minus 6 is equal to 114. And then we have 19x. Now, if we want to get x by itself, we need to go ahead and undo this multiplication because this is really like 19 times some number is equal to 114. So that value x, how we find it is we're going to go ahead and divide by 19 on both sides because then we can find what x is. So this is just equal to 1. Now, let's get our calculators out. So if we go 114 and we're going to divide by 19, we get 6. So our value of x is equal to 6. So 19 times 6 is equal to 114. That's what that's saying on this level right before it. So if x is equal to 6, now if we go back, what we're looking for is the arc measure of AB. So right here is what we're looking for. So what do we know about the arc measure of AB, which is equal to 5x plus 5? So this is what we're looking for. But now we know x is equal to 6. So that's something we know. So what we have to do is go ahead and plug that in. So we have 5. Now substitute in the 6 plus 5. So what does that mean? So we go 5 times 6, which is equal to 30, because we do multiplication before we do addition. So we go 30, then plus 5. So what do we get? We get the arc measure of AB is equal to 30 plus 5, so that's 35 degrees.